Hello ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk for a few moments about the newly announced Nikon D7200. This is a preview of what this camera is. Going to run down through the specs, talk a little bit about how it compares to some of the other cameras, and of course the changes from the Nikon D7100, which for the most part are slight. So I've got some slides that I'm going to share with you, and we're just going to walk through these right here. So first thing I want to talk about is just kind of remind you what the D7X series offers. So the D7100 and the D7200, but there really haven't been any drastic changes all the way back to the D7000. We've got a 24 megapixel sensor in both of these cameras, no optical low pass filter. They both share a 51.15 cross type AF system. The D7200 is slightly redesigned. We'll talk about that in a second. 6 frames per second. You can get 7 frames a second in a 1.3x crop mode. They both offer dual SD card slots. They're weather sealed. Great battery life from both of these cameras, even better from the D7200 we'll see. And they offer pentaprism viewfinders. That is the kind of nicer, larger, you get 100% coverage, and it's just a little bit brighter than your penta mirror. In red, the new features of the Nikon D7200. So again, if you just watched my D5500 review very recently, this is going to look similar because we've got 24 megapixel sensors in both, but this is a newly designed sensor, and I suspect it is the same as that is in the D5500. It does have an X-Speed 4 processor, so that is an increase, X-Speed 3 in the D7100, and we should see increased performance in a couple of different areas because of that. Same autofocus system, but better in low light, down to 3 EV. The D7100 is good down to -2 EV. There is some suggestion that we have a better AF system overall for tracking as well. ISO 100 to 25,600, but now in the D7200 we have 102,000, but black and white only. Why do they do that? Well, you get so much chroma noise at those really high ISOs that they're going to limit you to just black and white. I don't know how you feel about that. It's interesting. It's an interesting way to tackle that issue. It really feels like they're just kind of artificially inflating the number, but then saying, what? But black and white only. An increased buffer. We're going to come back and talk about this in a second, but you should be able to shoot 100 full-size JPEGs before you notice any slowdown from that 6 frames a second. We now have 1080 60p, or 1080p, 60 frames a second, but only in 1.3x crop mode. The D7100 only had 1080 60i. So, but now we do have P, but only in that crop mode of 1.3x. We'll talk about what that crop mode is more in a second too. We have in-camera time-lapse with exposure smoothing. Honestly, I'm not quite sure if they mean this exposure smoothing is something that is going to eliminate the kind of aperture flicker you get in time lapses, or if this is really going to allow a gradual transition like a bramping system. So a little more research needed there. Wi-Fi and NFC, a little asterisk next to NFC, let you know that this is the first Nikon DSLR that's offering NFC. But also, I want to remind you that the Wi-Fi features of these Nikon cameras are really limiting. You cannot change your settings. You can basically remotely take a shot and download the files. That's it. You cannot adjust your settings. And an improved battery life. The original, or not original, but the D7100 came in just under 1,000 shots, somewhere in the 900 range. We're now up to 1,100 shots. I think this is from the X-Speed 4 processor. Is supposed to be a little bit more energy efficient. 1,100 shots, that's a great number. Really good battery life. Here they are, side by side, D7100, D7200. Can you tell the difference? I can't tell the difference, except that I remember when I got these shots, and they're not exactly to scale. I just grabbed these off of Amazon, put them side by side. Up here on the top left, you can see the way I remember it is the D7100. The shot I took, it's got the little flash hot shoe plastic protector. So D7100 on the left, I think I label them now, D7200 on the right. If we take a look at the top, very similar, and again, not perfectly to scale, but these are basically the same, or they are the same dimensions. The weight is supposed to be a little bit lighter in the D7200, but I've seen it reported in other places as the same, so I'm not going to talk about the weight other than it's very similar, if not exactly the same. One thing to note is that this is the D7200 on the right. We've now got the effects on the dial as well. Consumers love that. Professionals, don't really care so much. It is absent from the D7100, but that doesn't mean that a bunch of effects are offered in the D7200. It just means it's got a spot on the dial. It was accessed through the menu before. I mentioned that buffer, but well, first let me take you back about 2 years to my D7100 review. I loved the camera. Fantastic quality and value. But the one thing that held it back was this pitiful buffer. You get 6 frames a second, but look when you're shooting raw here, you can see this is the each of these little peaks is the audio picking up the shutter or the mirror, you know, a shot happening. And you can see that you got about, what, 2, 4, 6, 7 shots, and then a gap, and then you see a really significant slowdown. You ended up with, over about a 10-second period, a burst rate of about 3.4 when you're shooting the higher quality RAWs. The JPEGs are up at 5.7, so you got 57, so that's close to the 6 frames. And you know, you really don't see much of a slowdown there, but the RAW was pitiful. And really held it back from being a really serious sports or wildlife camera. They have addressed this. They've said they've addressed this, and according to some calculations that I ran on the back of a napkin, the D7200 should be able to get about 40 RAW in the same period of time using a good card like the one shown here. So again, still not hitting that 6 frames a second over a long period of time, but it should be a much significantly longer period of time, a full 1.5 seconds to 2 seconds before you really do hit that slowdown. So that is going to be key to see how much that really translates in real world. Should you upgrade from the D7200, or should you upgrade from the D7100 to the 7200? No, there's just not enough difference here. Low light improvement, yes, but it's not huge. You're better off spending this money on a lens. Except if you're shooting with the D7100 and you've really been frustrated by that buffer, then maybe consider moving up. From the D5X series, 5200, 5300, or further back if you've been hanging on longer, congratulations to you, that's impressive. Yes, you know, it could be. If you are looking to grow as a photographer, the D7200 series offers, or the D7X series offers a lot of room for growth as a photographer. It's got that flash commander system built in as well. So it may be something that you should consider. Real quick, you know, I've had the D5500 in my hand. I have a full review out on that camera, and you know, I don't really think people should be trying to decide between one or the other. It should be a pretty clear decision, but let's hit them real quick. D5500, much lighter, much smaller, offers a touch screen, which makes it more friendly to use. It's a nice camera, and it's going to offer the same image quality, but the D7200 is larger, feels great in the hands. I'm expecting that it will, basically, that it's the same as the D7100, and I appreciated that. Much more manual controls and physical buttons, better autofocus system with incredible coverage across the frame. I mentioned that 1.3x crop mode. When you're in that mode, your focus points cover the entire frame you're shooting. You then have a crop factor of just about 2x, which means a 35mm lens becomes a 70. That's pretty snazzy too for getting just a little bit more, I'm going to put it in quotes even though you can't see me, zoom, because really you're just cropping. But you have the benefit of better frames per second. That's what the 7FP, the slash here, and you have the better autofocus system and coverage. You also have a much larger, brighter viewfinder, and you've got weather sealing. So that's, you know, some of them ones. You also got the dual card slots as well. Now, I've been asked 70D versus D7200. Well, you know, you can go back and watch my 70D versus D7100. There's not going to be a whole lot of differences there, other than we've got a little bit more advanced in the low light capabilities of the D7200. But let's touch on this real quick. Articulating touchscreen. The Canon's articulating touchscreen is fantastic and makes the camera a joy to use. Along with that goes that awesome live view focusing capabilities. You have that dual pixel autofocus system in the 70D that just focuses in live view so smoothly and so quickly that it's really impressive. And it does that silently with STM lenses, but you put other good lenses on and it is still smooth, just not silent. Right now, 70D comes in at about $999, so that saves you about $200 over the D7200. D7200, you got a few more bullet points here, but they don't all carry the same amount of weight, so don't just count up the numbers and say the D7200 is a clear winner. But its low light, high ISO performance is going to be better. I didn't see huge differences between the D7100 and the 70D, but when I did, the 7100 was the winner. And I think the 7200 is going to improve upon that more, and so you're going to see that. The phase detection system in the D7200 is better than the 70D, so that's when you're shooting through the viewfinder. It's the dual pixel, it's the live view where the 70D really shines. You've got that crop mode, which gives you a little bit more versatility with this camera, a little bit faster frame rate. You have dual card slots, which is nice. 70D only has one. And you've just got more buttons and a slightly better build quality. It's a magnesium alloy body in there, and the 70D is aluminum polycarbonate on top. And the D7200 also offers a slightly larger viewfinder. This is another comparison where, well, again, I think there's a pretty clear winner here. If you're considering the Canon 7D Mark II, you want that 10 frames a second. I mean, you can't see me again, but here it is on high. Oops, let's just make that. That was shooting RAW and JPEG to a fast SD card in the Canon 7D Mark II. It is a fast camera, and its autofocus system, both live view and phase detection, is excellent. That's 10 frames a second. You've got SD and CF card slots, sorry about that. So you've got dual card slots, it's weather sealed, built like a tank, and you've got the 1080 60p or 1080p 60. I'm going to try to say it a different way each time to confuse everybody. 1080p 60 frames a second without any need for that extra crop mode. So that video side of it is an advantage. And it's got GPS built in. D7200, again, low light. I haven't matched these up, but I believe that the low light high ISO performance and the dynamic range are going to be slightly improved over the 7D Mark II. Not a huge difference, but probably noticeable at times. You've got the Wi-Fi functionality in the D7200 that you don't have in the 7D Mark II, and you've got a significant savings in the D7200 with $400 over the body-only instant rebate that's going on right now with the 7D Mark II. I'm repeating myself from the D5500 review. These cameras are coming into a crowded market. We've got the D7100 and the 7200, the 70D, 7D Mark II. We've got Pentax K-Series that offers weather sealing and good frame rates and good features. We've got the mirrorless like the Samsung NX1, the Olympus brand new OMD EM52 with that in-body image stabilization. We've got the Sony a6000. It's getting a little bit older, but still, we've got a lot of options right now. And what does the D7200 offer? Well, excellent value. I mean, this is getting into a professional level camera with excellent high ISO performance, good frame rates, looks like the buffer is going to be much improved for sports, and you've got access to Nikon's lenses. Those things are big, and they make a big difference. So, if you liked this, take a moment to hit that thumbs up button to let other people know that this was helpful. And if you haven't already subscribed, take a moment to subscribe to me as I switch back to me. And if you really want to support what I'm doing here, I'm running a Patreon campaign where you can pledge money per month. And as a result, you get access to things like our Lightroom videos, a support group, personal critiques by me, and lots more. So right down below this video is a link to check that out, along with the blog post that talks in more detail about some of these different cameras, including 7D Mark II. Thought maybe I didn't really have it. And, well, the 70D, the NX1, which, wow, this is a fun camera to use. Might not match the D7200 on the professional level for a couple different reasons, but if I just wanted to go out and take pictures and share pictures, the feature set of this and the quality of this camera is fantastic, but I'll be talking lots more about that in a review soon. Questions, comments, concerns, put them right down below. Thanks so much for watching. Goodbye.